Pip pip. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special returning guest, someone who I absolutely adore speaking with, Carl Benjamin, the artist formerly known as Sargon of Akkad. You might find him at lotuseaters.com. You have the best voice of anyone on the right wing. And I was just thinking before this interview, a fun story if it would have involved you. I don't know if you know this, if people at home might not know this. In North Korea, they tell their kids a propaganda story by Kim Jong-il. And Kim Jong-il's in kindergarten, and the teacher says 1 + 1 is 2. And he goes, that's not necessarily true. And she's like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, if you have one drop of water and you add another drop of water, you have one bigger drop of water. And I told this story to a North Korean refugee, and she knew the story. She's like, oh, what a genius. But then I imagine if little Kim Jong-il had your voice, it would be a lot more persuasive.
I mean, he's not wrong, is he? Let's be fair.
I'm sold.
It's clever stuff, that, you know. How are you doing? Nice to see you again.
Phenomenal. Before we start talking about the UK, I'm about to make you very jealous because I have in my hands a signed copy of Diane Abbott's memoir, Woman Like Me.
No. Someone sent that to our office. We have a copy of it too.
Is it signed though?
I didn't check, but someone sent us a copy of it as well. I don't know why.
The publishers are so sadistic that they but the thing is she has Parkinson's, so this autograph, she's got to be doing hundreds of them, you know, in that scrawl. So what I want to talk about first is Americans are very provincial in many ways and are oblivious to other countries and think everything's Republican versus Democrat, and it's not always analogous. People in the US are oblivious to how left-wing the left wing in Europe and the UK is. There's this joke about how American Democrats are basically European right-wingers. Yeah. Reading this book, it's just fascinating because at one point she talks about the IRA and she's like, well, what do you expect them to do? You know, vis-a-vis the terrorism. And then later in the book, she goes, they accuse me of endorsing terrorism. Like, yeah, it's on page 54. So I would love to hear your thoughts and to our largely American audience about whether that's true or not.
So on some subjects, yes, but on other ones, no, you guys are insane. Okay. The topic of abortion in particular is actually wild. Americans are genuinely, the American left are genuinely psychotic on the subject of abortion.
Yes.
Like to a realm of unfathomable evil that no European country tolerates. Like the most liberal countries in Europe have, by American standards, really quite restrictive abortion rules. I mean, there are some, like, I can't remember if it was France or Germany. It's something like 13 weeks is the cutoff point for abortion, which is really low.
Yeah.
Really, really soon, if you think about it, compared to the American Democrats who are desperate to make it abortion up until the age of about 10. You know,
hold on, let me correct you though. I don't know if you know this. You probably don't. There are several states right now where it's abortion till birth.
Yeah, no, I'm aware.
Yeah.
That's why I made the joke of it being until the age of 10.
Yeah.
Because just a slight exaggeration, not actually much of an exaggeration.
Right.
But this is in Europe generally seen to be psychotic. But the thing is, the Labour Party also passed this.
Yeah.
So what this does is gives us a barometer, because I mean, people in Britain are not in favour of this. No one was asking for this.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah, no one wanted this. This wasn't something they campaigned on or anything like that. It's just they found themselves in power and thought, right, okay, we're going to do all of the evil things that we've always wanted to do, but for the past 14 years, people kept voting Conservative, and so people kept getting all the retarded things instead. We get to do the evil things now, and the stupid things as well. Like another thing as well they've just done is they've arbitrarily changed it, so voting will be done at the age of 16 now. And it's like, oh, right, so you can just arbitrarily change the age of voting, can you? Because that means when we win, we're going to make it 35, right? And we can just do that, and you guys can just fuck yourselves if that's how that works, right? And it seems that's how it works. You just have to win an election, then you can just gerrymander it completely.
That's not how it works.
Well, I mean, you would think that's not how it works. You would think there'd need to be a public debate, maybe a referendum on the subject or something like that, you know. Something, but no, Keir Starmer and his Labour Party have decided, no, we're just going to arbitrarily change it. We can do that. We're the government. We can do whatever the fuck we want. This is basically a fascist dictatorship, which it basically is. And he's right. But that, unfortunately for them, still means when the next election rolls around, and they will lose it really, really badly, Well, we can demand, no, we want it raised. I want it to be 30-year-olds. 30 plus can vote. No one under that. And I can think of a reason. I don't give a shit. They didn't come up with a reason. They just literally arbitrarily told us that was the case. So now 16-year-olds can vote, but they can't drink or look at pornography on the internet. We are in absolute clown world territory. And I mean, they could probably get conscripted too. I mean, with war with Russia or whoever. And so, yeah, like, unironically, our country is going bonkers, but we are catching up to the American left. Because the thing is, and the thing is, right? No. The problem is that the American left comes up with really stupid and ludicrous policies. And our government are like, we don't have any policies at all. We haven't got a single fucking idea. And you know how I know that this is how this works, right? Because England gets the lowest number of sunshine hours per year out of any country in the world other than parts of Alaska. And yet, our government is like, you know what we need, guys? Solar panels. It's like, really? Did someone in California come up with that idea? Did they? God. You fucking retards. And you know that they did. And so that, you know that they just were like, oh, wow, the American left are going solar panels. It's like, yeah, they live in deserts. You know, no wonder they want solar panels. We don't. We live in a very gloomy island. Can we just have nuclear power just like France, please? Because you'll notice that everywhere in Europe is like, oh, God, energy. Apart from the French, because they built, I don't know, like 60 nuclear power plants like 50 years ago, and have had absolutely no problems with energy ever since. And yet we're still stuck in the fucking dark ages, following the American left, going, right, okay, what's the next crazy thing that you're going to do? Because then we'll just implement it because we can.
Well, the French also have things fueled by all those cars that are being burned every weekend by all the lovely immigrants.
You know, oh, right, I thought you were going to say by the French. Protesting is a long-standing French tradition. I mean, it sounds to me like the immigrants are just integrating, frankly.
They're more French than the French.
Well, you know, in
they
some
brought
ways,
back
you
the
know,
guillotine, haven't they?
Oh, you know, they haven't gone that far. Can we talk about this Bridget Macron being a man thing?
Wait 1 second, because there's just a point I wanted to make with what you were saying earlier. People in the States also don't appreciate that when the Labor government basically legalized abortion until birth or something analogous to that, the way it was covered in all the left of even moderate British media was Keir Starmer protects like abortion rights. It made it seem like the day before it was illegal under any circumstance of abortion, and now he gave women the choice of the first trimester. It was completely disingenuous. And when we're talking about something which I don't know what the numbers are in Britain, but even here in the States, the number of people
200,000 a year.
I just meant in terms of polling, like the number of people even in the States who would be like abortion until birth it's going to be some minuscule. This is real crazy, like satanic stuff. So when I saw that, I don't know if I was more shocked by the policy or by the shamelessness of the coverage, especially in a social media world where it's perfectly obvious what the journalist is doing.
Yeah, but remember, everything they do by fiat, we can undo by fiat to the nth degree. Because what they've failed to understand is that the British political settlement has always been, at least up until like very recently, based on a kind of consent, right? Based on the idea that the loyal opposition actually matters because they do represent a significant constituency in the country. Right. And nobody has such a mandate that they can just arbitrarily fuck around the entire system in the face of everyone else. And so there were changes made, but they weren't such crazy changes, although you could caveat that with when Labour won in the 60s, they put in a bunch of things that people just didn't want, and the Conservatives obviously never did anything about. But now the Labour Party has just decided they're going to go full French Revolution and just start implementing all of those most radical policies because they're like, hang on, we're in charge. The Parliament is unbounded. We can do whatever we like. And it's like, okay, good. I'm glad you're setting this precedent because holy shit, we're going to denaturalize so many fucking people you brought here. We are going to make it so you've got to be 35 to vote, and women can never have abortions. You're going to be fleeing to Ireland rather than the other way around for your fucking abortions when we win. Trust me, I am so sick of this. I am so sick of the breach of the settlement. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but trust us, it's going to come back around because, I mean, even now, people like Farage is by far and away in the lead. And he is unbelievably wet, right? Reform are not a serious vote. They're a protest vote. People are like, look, I'm just sick of this. But Farage is like the backstop to this paradigm. He's like, no, I can fix it, guys. You can't fix it. It's fucked, right? And it's all going to go downhill, which is why you've got professors from like, Imperial College London or wherever going, oh, guys, I think we're about to head into a civil war. Like, this is crazy. Things are terrible. There's like ethnic conflict everywhere. And every time one of the new arrivals goes on a stabbing spree, there's like, buildings go up in flames and people are out on the streets crying bloody murder. It's like, yeah, I think things are getting a bit fucking tense, actually. But on the plus side, when we actually win with a proper right-wing party, and that day is absolutely coming, mark my words, we'll have the mandate to just change whatever the hell we like. They'll be like, they did this, they did that, they did the other. They didn't consult any of us. They didn't care about our opinions at all. So fuck your opinions. We're the ones in charge. And until you win an election, go do one.
I agree theoretically with literally everything you just said, with one big caveat. We've gone through this here in the States. The Democrats had Congress for 40 years, from 1953 to 1994, and the Republicans came in 1995. We're going to change everything. You had Trump in 2016. What the Labor understands, and I'm sure you'll agree, you just kind of hinted at it, is Labor had, the Conservatives had 14 years, many of them without the Lib Dems as their junior partner, to overturn any of Tony Blair or Gordon Brown's policies, and they did nothing, especially in immigration, which was the low-hanging fruit.
And they were worse than the Labour Party in immigration.
And also free speech, too. That was them.
Oh, yeah. And remember, in Britain, all of woke from about 2010 to 2022, 23, the peak woke period, that was all conservatives.
Yes.
All conservatives. But the thing is, you've got to remember, the Conservatives didn't do anything because they didn't want to do anything, right? Because the Conservatives are the slow arse cheek of the Uniparty, desperate to catch up with what the other arse cheek has done, right? And they're constantly looking for the approval of the Labour Party,
right?
So they don't do anything. So like, oh, if we did that, oh no, the Labour Party is going to be angry with us. The papers, the Financial Times will give us a bad write-up. And it's like, oh my God, when we win, we're banning all of these. Do you understand? Like, I'm going to burn them all down. Like, you don't understand just how fucking angry everyone is at this point, right? And so it's not that the power doesn't actually reside there. It does, right? If you got a parliament of about 350 psychotic patriots, and again, I'm telling you, this day is approaching, rapidly approaching, you can do anything, right? Trump is bounded by a constitution that he can't just arbitrarily amend. That does not exist in Britain. What existed in Britain was a long-settled, homogenous nation that wanted to be friends with their neighbours. And actually cared about what the other guys across the street thought. Even if they disagreed and voted for a different party, we still cared about one another. Those days are gone, right? The Labour Party has burned that capital completely. And so it's like, right, okay, now it's just a struggle, right? Now it's just a political death match, basically. And okay, that's great. You guys look settled right now. You look like you're winning right now. But this isn't going to last, because remember, this country is a right-wing country. Britain, the English people in particular, are very right-wing. And there are loads of metrics by which we can see this. Like, for example, a poll came out today. Have you heard the term remigration?
Of course, it's a taboo term. Can I explain to the audience, for the audience's benefit?
I like the way you've caveated it. It's a taboo term, right? It's like, well, hang on a second. What's that mean? Well, that means we're going to stop all immigration and start sending home millions of people who are allowed to come here.
Right.
And YouGov did a poll, and YouGov is an online polling system that is kind of half self-selected, but it also tends to skew left-wing. And they did a poll going, oh, what do you think of remigration? And 45% were just yes. Hard yes. And then you've got the band of 20% who are like, maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea. And then you've got a marginal number of people like, no, we need more foreigners. And just on the first question, without any proper campaigning, almost half of people are like, yeah, stop the inflow, send a bunch of them home, they've got to go. There's other metrics as well, like the death penalty, for example. Obviously, Labour abolished the death penalty in this country against the wishes of the population. If you just poll people in the street, 50% will just say, yeah, we need to bring that back. And that's just, should we have the death penalty? If you change the wording of the question to, should we have the death penalty for child murderers or terrorists, that goes up to like 60-65%. And you start getting like other like darker blue bands coming in like, yes, and we should flog them in public. And we should, people are far more right-wing than our politics would indicate. And people are pissed off. really, really pissed off. Like you see these conversations happening everywhere. Like I overhear it on the train when I'm just traveling. This, oh god, everything's terrible. Look at the number of people on it. Where have these guys come from? Stuff like this. It's like, okay, this is something that people are really noticing now because our quality of life is declining so much, and the nature of the country is so palpably changing. So the Labour Party, enjoy your little grace period now because this is not going to stay on forever.
Guys, you might not know this, but I edited my buddy John Durant's book, The Paleo Manifesto. And one of the things the paleo people talk about all the time, and they're correct, is how tallow is better for you than seed oils. It is more natural and it tastes better. And that's where masa comes in. Masa decided to bring it back. They created a tasty, delicious tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients and no seed oils: corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do they avoid the bad stuff, they taste incredible. You know what they did? They're really smart. They sent me a box with every single one of their flavors, and it fits my macros, and I don't feel guilty because seed oils, I don't need to tell you about seed oils. You know what you want to do if you want to know about seed oils? Just go onto social media and write, tell me about seed oils, and the replies will make your eyes roll back in your head because all these, people, these Maha types, they will not stop talking about how bad they are for you, and they're not entirely wrong. The best thing is the beef tallow makes the chips more satiating and digest differently, so you won't find yourself uncontrollably binging and still feeling hungry afterwards. Masa chips are beloved by tens of thousands of customers, and they've been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts. Ready to give them a try? Go to masachips.com/malice. That's MASA chips.com/malice. Use code malice, 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/malice, code malice for 25% off your first order. Guys, and I do mean guys, have you heard about OneSkin Scalp Serum, which is OS1 hair? People are raving about it. I've been using it since they launched it a few months ago. If you're familiar with OneSkin, you know their patented OS1 technology. It's what powers their skin and sun protection products, and now it's targeting age-related hair loss and thinning. Listen to this. Listen! People are sending reviews like my hair's never felt this thick and full, and I started 3 months ago. I'm seeing new little hairs on my scalp line, and I'm a very failed podcaster, and I couldn't do anything. Thank you, OS1. It's not just talk. OneSkin scientists did a clinical study showing that after 6 months, participants have significantly thicker and denser hair. Now, if you're ready to give OS1 hair a try, like I am, you can get 15% off your first 3-month supply with code MALICE at oneskin.co. OneSkin's entire research and development process is run in-house, strictly adhering to the rigor of the scientific process from start to finish, and they believe that the purpose of skincare is not just to improve how you look, but to optimize your skin's biology at the cellular level so it's more resilient to the aging process. I didn't just come out of bed looking this good. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off by using code MALICE at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code MALICE. And after you purchase, they'll ask you if you heard about them and tell them Michael Malice sent you. Let's get back to the show. So every so often I've had a conversation with someone and I'll remember something that was said and it'll kind of come back to my mind. I'm sure you've had the same thing. And there's something you and I discussed last time you were on, and I just think about it, I'd say once a week, it just pops in my head, which is, blah, blah, oh, this is racist, this is racist, racist. And what we discussed is if there were like 500,000 Frenchmen joining the British Isles every year, you wouldn't be like, bravo, and put on a beret and welcome them in with baguettes and cheese. You'd be like, get the F out, F off to France where you belong. Same thing here. If a bunch of Canadians started coming in, it's like, hold on a minute. Like, you have Canada. Why are you here to begin with? But
we actually had this with Eastern Europeans. There were millions of Eastern Europeans, and everyone's like, why is this happening?
Right. And I say this is over from Eastern Europe. But upstairs in my house, as I think I've told you, I have Margaret Thatcher's bookcases. And I'm a big Anglophile. I'm a huge admirer of the British people, what they've accomplished. Maybe you're not allowed to say it, but I'll say it, that colonialism is not all downside, and it's absurd to claim that it is.
Sorry, this is another one of those things where you can tell how right-wing the British public are. We have had decades, in my entire life, have been propagandized against the British Empire. When polled, half of people think it was just a good thing.
Okay,
Still, just a good thing. All of the mainstream narrative about British Empire, oh, it's evil, it's racist, it's slave trading, and everyone's like, yeah, I kind of like it though. I kind of think it was Chad, and we should go back to that.
But I remember I don't remember. I read it was a 79 or 78 when Thatcher was head of the opposition, and she just said, "I can't bear the sight of Britain decline. I can't." She goes, we were the only ones who stood alone against Hitler. We faced all of Europe, and look at us now. And the British people rallied around her, and she was like, I think, the last PM who really loved Britain, like just passionately to her bones. I really hope with every fiber of my being what you're saying is true, because I feel, and I hate saying this because I sound like a boomer, because they're always like, oh, this is the last election and then it's over. I'm sorry, just in terms of if you're importing people who aren't Brits and you're lowering the vote to 16-year-old simpletons, and everyone who's 16 is a simpleton,
Yeah.
This might be the last shot for real.
Well, it might be the last shot via the parliamentary process.
Sure, right. Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm completely committed to the parliamentary process, GCHQ. So don't you worry about that. But we're going to start winning these elections from the right. Everyone can see this has gone far too far. And Reform are just the first shot across the bow on this. And even now, like every poll has Nigel Farage over 300 and something, 357 seats or something was what I saw today. Like Farage is going to be the next prime minister. Now, he is as wet as a lettuce. So he's going to do nothing of any particular substance. But you can see the direction in which the country is traveling. Right, we have had enough, and even Farage is saying we've had enough. Yes, it's gone far too far. So I'm actually reasonably confident. I do agree with your point about Thatcher being the last truly patriotic prime minister. Though I remember seeing a video of her. She was addressing, I think it was the European Parliament, and she was just telling them to their faces, we don't care about you at all. We're proud of being British. We're proud of our institutions. We're proud of our history. And we don't care about your opinions, and we don't respect your opinions whatsoever. And I was just like, fucking give them it. I would have voted for it.
Yeah, and what people in America might not realize, in 1990, it was her deputy prime minister, Jeffrey Howe, who was the quintessential nerd, who resigned over this because he wanted them to follow the euro, or the ERM, whatever it was called, European Regulatory Mechanism. And he's like, we can't do it if the head of the party is just sitting there wagging her finger and screaming, no, no, no. And in retrospect, she was completely right. To have the British economic system entangled irrevocably with the rest of Europe is certainly, this would have been a disaster for the British people. The Schengen Agreement vis-a-vis Britain would have been a complete disaster, and some ramifications still remain. So I desperately hope that what you're saying comes true. But I also, when you see the police arresting people for Facebook posts, when you see people condemning Hamas and them getting arrested in Britain, that is if this was 20 years ago, this is what the crazy people are prophesying. And it's like, okay, crazy person, just go sit in that corner. This is never going to happen. This is your tinfoil hat, foaming at the mouth. What's that square where people get on their soapbox and rant their craziness?
Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, go back to Speaker's Corner and just ramble on Sunday morning. Bravo. Like, let the adults talk.
Yeah, no, you are right. It is terrible. What's happening at the moment? It's genuinely terrible. But the thing is, I'm kind of an accelerationist about it at this point, because it's so clear that there is just a sea change happening, right? The previous paradigm that was like, oh, excessively liberal, oh, aren't we all just the same? Won't they just come over and become just like us? Well, all of these things, like going to Afghanistan, spread democracy, and all the boomer bullshit from the last era, from the previous century, it's all been burned up, right? No, the migrants are basically all rapists. Every single fucking day, there's an example of a bunch of Afghans or Eritreans or Somalians or whoever who've raped a bunch of children in some quiet little village in England. And it's like, right, okay, right, so they're just all evil, right? Got it. And then you've got like, oh, well, can we not just give, democracy to Iraq or Afghanistan? No, of course we fucking can't. They're a bunch of tribals. Of course they don't want democracy. If you actually look at it, the only people on Earth who actually have a functioning democracy are Northwest Europeans and their descendants. Like Eastern Europeans, you wouldn't call what they have functioning democracies. They're utterly corrupt. No offense or anything. It's just like, it's just not the way that they do things. It's like, that's fine. It's just parochial to us, right? So all of these fantasies about like the universalism of our culture and of liberalism, of all these things, no, they were complete fantasies, and everything's been proven wrong. Like the trans thing, are men women? No, they're not fucking women, obviously. There's obviously real, tangible physical differences, and there's moral differences between cultures. Like I did a video yesterday talking about how a problem that we have in modern Britain is witch doctors trafficking children from Africa to sacrifice in England to get rid of the bad juju or whatever bullshit they fucking believe, right? And they genuinely believe this. So they will literally smuggle in children and essentially torture them to death in England. And this is something that the government, they've got this thing called the Amber Project that is dealing with this. And it's just like, what are we doing here, folks? Why, look, if you want to make the case for imperialism, I'm open to hearing about it, because I agree the world was better governed when the British were governing it. Like, look at any post-imperial country outside of the Anglosphere and tell me, were they better off with a British administrator or not, right? I'm open to hearing that. But when they all said, no, we want independence, that meant we fuck off and they fuck off. That's what that meant. That doesn't mean we import all of them here and have their problems still. And the problem is the British ruling class never got over the loss of the empire. Like, they're the same institutions. It's the same continuity. All of the institutions that we labour under now, like the BBC, all of the Home Office, all of these things, they were all creations of the British Empire during that period of time. And so they continue with that legacy. And even now, you'll hear it from every Prime Minister. You hear it from Boris Johnson, from Liz Truss, from Keir Starmer. They say it with me, our best days are ahead of us. Are you fucking mad? We used to control the world. Like, we had a quarter of the globe directly under our administration, and all of the trade and all of the finance, it was all done under our auspices. I don't think that's coming back, bro. I think those days may have gone, and that's okay. Right, what we could do now is make Britain a shining jewel among the nations. We could make our country so beautiful and prosperous that people look at us in awe and envy. And it used to be, right, 100 years ago, it used to be that when an educated Englishman stepped foot on a foreign continent, that was important. Like, people paid attention. You see this in, like, George Orwell shooting an elephant, actually. He's the only Englishman in Burma with a gun. Right, so this elephant's gone crazy, and everyone's like, "Oh God, what's going to go on?" So George Orwell, they all look to him because he's the white man, and he's like, "Oh shit, I guess I better get the elephant gun and go and shoot it then." And everyone's following. Go on then, show us what you're going to do. It mattered when people of this quality arrived in places where they didn't have access to the kind of institutions that we had access to. And we can return to that. We can return to exporting brilliant Englishmen around the world and impressing people with the grace and gravitas that we used to project. But instead, we've just thrown it all away to try and extend human rights to Somalians in London. And it's like, okay, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. We have options here. We can take them. Sorry, I realise I'm ranting and raving, but this is just always on my mind. It's always on my mind.
It should be always on your mind, because I was looking at this last election. I think a lot of MAGA people really are reading the election incorrectly, because Trump beat Officer Harris by like 2.5%. And if you have someone who is like probably the weakest candidates the Democrats had to field in generations, who in her defense had like 3 months to put together a campaign, which I wouldn't wish on anyone, and she still comes in 2 points. And then I looked at 1988. And 1988, that was after 8 years of Reagan, George H.W. Bush ran, and he had like 440 electoral votes. And Dukakis, who was a sitting governor, smart, spoke for his opinions well, had the press behind him too, he won far fewer states than she had. And I looked at like what could you would think in that case Bush would have done worse than Trump, because that, first of all, you had no social media, so all the media was left. And the reason is, in 1988, America was 80% white, and now it's 60% white. Yeah. So if those voters skew more Democrat than the white voters do, just on math issues, it's going to skew toward the Democratic candidate. And I go, what happens in 2028 when you have a Republican candidate who's 1% worse than Trump, and you have a Democratic candidate who's 2% better than Harris, which is really easy to do? Yeah. You're fucked.
And it goes back even further, if you think about it. When you go back to like Nixon and Reagan, well, they got wipeouts, didn't they?
49 states each.
Yeah, crazy numbers. And it's like, and if America was the 80% white country that it was back then, Trump would have got the same. But
right,
it's not.
That's correct.
And, Trump represented the same kind of ethos, pro-American ethos that existed in those. And it honestly, a lot of this is down to Reagan, I think, to be honest. But I think you're absolutely right. The demographics is just one of those questions that is now it's the sword of Damocles, and the horsehair is thinning and becoming weaker. And and in particular in the case of America, and this a lot of Americans think that England is completely done in, but we're still 75% white English, right? We are actually on the demographic front actually doing a lot better than America is. We have less of a culture of integration, so we handle it worse. But when it comes to that kind of time, we're in a better position than you guys are. So I am worried for the future of America on that grounds. And you see even now, like the beginnings of the kind of Islamization of areas of America, Minnesota with all the Somalians, they're not Americans. They're not Americans. When the American president and the Mexican president, the Mexican riots in Los Angeles recently, and they're just the Mexican president's like, yeah, our Mexicans in America and in Mexico. It's like, look, they're not Americans. They're not Americans, guys. You have to understand, these people don't think of themselves as Americans. The Mexican president doesn't think of themselves as Americans. The Somalians don't think of themselves as Americans. You know, Ilhan Omar will go, our president, and she means the president of Somalia. That's who she's talking about, right? You've got to understand, it's not like it used to be. These people have not abandoned their old loyalties.
Well, in all fairness, there are a lot of Mexican Americans who are violently patriotic because they are the ones who see the alternative.
Hey, I just want to be that's going to be a really thorny issue for you guys to pick, but there are loads of them who are not.
Correct.
Who are absolutely.
I just want to clarify. No, because I don't think it's the
I
same
agree.
as people coming from Afghanistan to Great Britain. They're not trying to be British.
No. But the thing is, it's going to be a really thorny issue for you to unpick, because I do suspect that what the Mexican president, the Mexicans generally are trying to do, is kind of flip California like Texas flipped to the Anglos. I really think that's a plan. So
what do you mean?
You've got to watch out for it.
Flip in what sense?
As in change the demographics so sufficiently that the state just chooses to join the United States in the case of Texas. Well, California will choose just to go back to Mexico.
Well, I think what's interesting here is that the immigrant left is quite different from the Berkeley left. So the immigrant left is much more about maybe some welfare and some kind of standard of living kind of thing. It's not this insane ideology which is far more pernicious and evil. It's just basically an economic thing. And it is a marriage of convenience, but they're not. I would much rather have 1,000 Mexicans than 1,000 Harvard graduates in terms of the damage they can inflict on the country.
Well, the thing is, the 1,000 Mexicans doesn't just remain 1,000 Mexicans.
Sure.
And the Harvard graduates don't just remain the Harvard graduates. They
That's right.
wither away into nothing, and the Mexicans multiply into more Mexicans.
Well, no, but those Harvard graduates are the mind virus, and they're the ones who kind of proselytize and kind of turn.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
It is, but I think there are certain cultures that are kind of not really vulnerable to it, and I think the Mexican culture is kind of one of those cultures. I honestly, I really think that the demographic issue is tribal in America at this point. It's turning into a tribal issue, like it is here, frankly. And I think that a lot of Americans are having trouble seeing it because you've got this vision of the incorporative America in your minds, but I'm seeing so much coming out of America. This is the repudiation of your incorporative culture. And it may just be the sort of seeds of it now, but this is growing. And eventually, I think loyalties will be questioned. Are you an X or are you a Y? And I think it's something you're going to have to deal with in the near future.
I think it would come to a head directly correlated to economic issues. Because when things...
I think...
Let me finish my thought. Please, let me finish my thought. Which is, in my opinion, and I of course want to hear yours, when things are going well, people are a lot more charitable and don't really care. But when it's rats on a sinking ship, all of a sudden it's like, well, hold on a minute. Why is he here? Why is she there? This is more of a situation. But please go ahead.
I think this is the American perspective.
Okay.
I don't think this is necessarily the Mexican perspective.
That's okay.
The thing. I think that we don't understand, because Anglo cultures are very individualistic, very individualistic, and we assume that we are making what we would call rational decisions about our lives, and so if things are going well, then we're happy to carry on going along with these things. But non-English speaking cultures don't live that way, actually, and the blood ties of family, extended family, culture and community and nation are just perceived on a different level and in a different way to the way that the Anglo culture is perceived.
That's true. That's certainly true.
And so we think, oh, it must be an economic thing because we would be reacting to economic things. But these people are reacting to something else, and they think in different ways. And we see a lot of that in the grooming gangs actually here. The cultures. I mean, like I bet that there's not one person in your phone that you could phone up and go, hey, do you want to be in a grooming gang with me? Right?
Oh, you'd be.
You,
Oh,
you
you.
don't know you don't know anyone like that, right? I'm
I'll
sure
take
you
that
don't.
bet. Oh no, no, you'd be surprised. I'm from Brooklyn.
Okay, well, I don't know your phone, but in my phone, there's not one person I could say that to because they're like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've got a girl here," and they'd be like, "I'm phoning the cops, mate." Right? But these cultures
Oh,
don't do that,
by the way,
and
to clarify for people at home, because this is really, really key, because I was the one who got this to Elon's attention, and I really want to talk about this every chance I get because it's so evil. I had been under the impression that grooming gangs were teenage girls and they had like a immigrant boyfriend and he encouraged them to sleep together. Then on December 31st, I learned these were children. They were not groomed in the sense of like a high school girl is led on by a 21-year-old, and they were assaulted with baseball bats and all sorts of other things. And when they went to the cops returned them to their captors. And when I pointed this out on election night, Elon saw that and he got in a huge kerfuffle. So I just really want to clarify that for the audience because that term itself is, I think, intentionally chosen by the
yeah,
media to downplay the insanity of the level of evil that's happening.
yeah, it's crazy. What they are organized ethnic gangs.
Yes.
That they
Of
do.
children.
Yeah, of children of like the youngest are about 11, and then it goes into sort of the teens. And what they do is they play the boyfriend angle, so there is an element of that which gives them the sort of plausible deniability to call them grooming gangs. But then what they do is get them hooked on drugs and alcohol, and then they intimidate them into becoming essentially prostitutes. They traffic around the country
Yes.
and sell to other men in this community, and it's happened everywhere, and it's very widespread, and it's very well known. And in many cases, the police were in on it, as in there are
Yes.
policemen who have been charged as being part of these grooming gangs.
Wait,
So,
wait, wait. Hold
and
on. I have to ask. Oh God, I don't even want to know. I thought the policemen were just covering up. Am I incorrect that the policemen were actually partaking?
there are certain ethnic names that pop up who are members of the police force who also were part of the grooming gangs. Yes.
Oh,
So the point being, the blood loyalty in non-Anglo cultures goes deeper than our adherence to the rule of law. And I'm not saying that the Mexicans are nearly as bad as this community, obviously, but they are still kind of this kind of old world style culture where it's, the blood ties really matter to these people in a way that I think the Anglo world doesn't really properly comprehend. And so when it comes down to their Pledge of Allegiance or their ancestral homeland, they're not choosing the Pledge of Allegiance. And this is
well,
something I think Americans have to think about.
I'm going to push back a little bit because I think there's a big upside in some cases to blood ties, especially for Mexican Americans, which is they're a lot more skeptical of social leftism. They're a lot more socially conservative. They're not the ones who are turning their kids into girls. They're not the ones who are happy with all this kind of rainbow flag stuff. They're going to be disproportionately Catholic. There's a lot more, you're going to get her pregnant, you're going to marry her kind of stuff. So it's not all downside whatsoever.
No,
In this
that
circumstance.
is true, and that is good. I'm not casting aspersions on their culture qualitatively. It's just there will be a continual demographic change in America where the Anglo culture just recedes
That's true.
from
Yes.
areas
Yes.
where, and it when California is like 90% Mexican, how are you going to stop it just voting to join Mexico? Like
Well, I don't think I think what happens is immigrant communities want it both ways, right? They want their, you have them go to, especially ones who go to college, like Zoran Mamdani. America is the worst, it's the most racist. It's like, all right, here's your ticket. You can leave at any time. And so it's like they want to complain so they get good treatment, but they don't really want to go back, and you can't blame them.
No, but I mean, for the Somali community is a great example of this. It's a colonization effort, right?
Okay, yeah.
They view themselves as extracting resources from a
That's
colonial
right.
hegemon, which is why remittances are so good. Like remittances are a massive portion of like the Mexican economy and the Somali economy. It's and the Indian economy. It's crazy how much money they send home, and it's because they are here in the same way that we went to India, frankly, to extract wealth from there. And they work, they take money out of your economy and they send it away. We don't have to permit this, but really what this takes on the aspect of is a kind of global exploitation of the first world. We all know that they're doing it. They know they're doing it. And we're just sat there going, well, I guess I just have to deal with this forever and nothing can ever change. It's like, no, we can do something about this, actually.
Hey, it's James Altucher. I've been an entrepreneur, investor, best-selling writer, stand-up comic, and whatever it is I'm interested in, I get obsessed. Yes, it's led to success, but it's also led to such heartbreaking failure. I have failed more times than I can count. I wish in my life I had had people to talk to. That's why I started the James Altucher Show and bring on some of the most brilliant minds in every area of life. People like Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban, Danica Patrick, Gary Kasparov, and I wanted to find out exactly how they've navigated the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, just raw stories and real advice. I've talked to 1,500 of the most amazing people on the planet. So if you want to learn from the best and skip the same old canned interviews, we're all about helping you find your next big idea, level up your thinking, and ultimately to choose yourself. So let's do this together. Subscribe now to The James Altucher Show.
Let's get back to the show. I would love to hear your reaction, although I can guess it is still fun to listen to you talk about it. For people who are watching this don't realize, there was a huge number, and I'm sure you know the number of Afghans who were somehow revealed at some computer leak or something, and the British government secretly imported them into England without even telling anyone. These are people who I don't even think they speak English, or I don't know how many times they've been on a computer, things like this. And it was just recently exposed, and they can also now they bring over their families. Can you tell I'm sure I'm getting the facts largely correct.
Oh yes, you are correct. So the Conservative government decided when the Taliban took over, they decided, you know what we have to do? We have to cram Britain as full of Afghans as we possibly can. Because anyone in Afghanistan who would make the claim that they had cooperated with the British forces, it's just making the claim. Because remember,
are you serious?
I'm very serious, right? That we would decide we would ship them over because the Taliban otherwise would just murder them in their sleep or something. The Taliban have not shown any particular inclination to be that vengeful to the people who cooperated, because who cares? These people didn't fight for their country. Like, they didn't fight for the new regime or something. The second we disappeared, they just melted into the mountains. So who cares, right? But no, we were like, yeah, no, we've got to do something about this. And so we brought over, the Conservative government snuck over 25,000 people and took out a super injunction so that nobody could be told about it. So the media was banned from reporting on it, because that's something that the government can do, because we're not a constitutional republic or monarchy even. And they also were like, yeah, and so you can also bring any dependents that you like. And if you think about Afghan families, are massive. We don't actually know how many that actually was, but it could be up to something like 200,000 Afghans that the UK government just snuck into the country and started depositing around and hoping no one would notice. And it was only after several years of this happening that the super injunction finally got overturned by a judge, and or finally expired, and we got to find out how many knives were in our bag.
And this was also at a huge cost financially, correct?
Well, yeah, obviously, but everything costs a huge amount. Like we spend, I mean, honestly, it's hard to, okay, so the actual amount of money we spend on immigration is actually unknown, but in certain areas, I'm not joking.
I know you're not joking. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, right? So, for example, one example is health tourism, right? We don't know how much money we spend on health tourism because officially we're supposed to ask the person for their passport if they're foreign and say, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for this, but they never do. I've been to the doctors plenty of times, and the waiting room is always full of little old Pakistani women, and yet I've never seen them check their passport. And I've seen reports of them going, well, no, obviously we don't, because we believe in human rights, right? The human right to healthcare and things like this. So, okay, but someone's got to pay for that, right? And so We just don't know how many billions of pounds we spend purely on health tourism alone, but it's bound to be a lot. And the thing is, very few of these communities are actually net taxpayers anyway. So, you know, if you've got the sort of threshold here, they're all like way under the threshold, and then you've got like people from Denmark are above the threshold, but people from everywhere else in the universe, they're way under it. So they're costing us money by just being here anyway. And then we've got the amount we pay them in benefits, because of course if you arrive here and you're allowed to stay here, well, you can claim benefits. And if you've got a culture that actually doesn't value hard work and honesty and the sort of Protestant work ethic, well, they just do. And so we're paying at least £1 billion a month in benefits to foreigners. And again, I could go on. There are just these individual cases, and that's not talking about like the illegal immigrants either, right? This is all just legal. This is all things that were done completely lawfully that they have access to. And then you've got like the illegal immigrants. Now we know these are costing us somewhere around £4 billion a year, because what we do is we put them in a hotel, which costs loads of money. We give them everything they need, so you know everything you would need to survive, you know, food, clothing,
room service.
allowances,
You can't
stuff
live
like room
without
service.
room
Yeah,
service.
no, unironically room service. But we also give them free healthcare, so the British taxpayer pays for all that, and then just on top of that, we give them around $650 a month as just spending money. They need some pocket money, obviously, you know, so we need to give them about $600 a month. And if you think, a lot of people in probably your country and mine, after they've paid all of their bills and after they've paid their taxes, $650 a month doesn't sound like a bad deal, actually.
No.
I know people who don't have $650 a month after they've paid for everything they need to pay for, but our government gives them fucking free phones, you know, free everything. And so it's just like, what are we doing? And so anyway, like I said, we are spending billions and billions on immigrants just to have immigrants here. We don't know how much exactly because no good records are kept of it, but we know that it's billions, tens of billions. And this is why Britain is a poor country now, right? Britain's a poor country because we have to keep raising taxes to afford all of this. And we're still under what we need to spend, but you know, whatever we can do.
If someone here had $650 a month, you know, pocket money, they would also probably be in a position where they might lose their job at any moment, right? So they can't really be spending wasteful with it, because they have to be like, okay, hold on, let me finish. They have to be like, okay, I don't know how long this is going to last, so if I get fired, I need that month. These people don't have to worry about that. They know this gravy train's not ending, so it's in a sense it's even more than $650 because there's no incentive to save it, because it's like, you know what, I'm going to keep getting it in perpetuity.
Yep, and the very worst that they can expect is just to be sent back to where they came from.
Right.
Like, you know, they've got an extended holiday in Britain that's paid for by the British taxpayer, and when the government's finally like, you know what, you are going to have to go, they're like, yeah, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to put you on a plane and send you back, and you can just get your mum and dad to pick you up at the airport, and you can go back to wherever you came from and do whatever you were doing. So, right, so there's just no downside to any of these people. And it's mad, and everyone hates it. This is why there have been constant protests throughout. I mean, just all weekend there have been protests across the country, and I think they're probably going to carry on. Frankly, people have just had enough at this point. So it's intolerable.
Let me ask about how remigration would actually work. So for people who don't know, I think it got brought into the public discourse in Germany with the AfD. And then very quickly, all the right of center, or the kind of, I don't know, the Farage types of different countries, Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, you had Salvini in Italy. I think a lot of them kind of were like, whoa, like, let's not talk, you know, they kind of backed off, right? A couple of years after that, all of a sudden, it's now largely, I think, thanks to social media, people have been, well, hold on a minute. Like, why is this such a taboo? If you've been here for 1 year, you don't speak the language, you have no job, you have no incentive doing a job. Why are you here? I've asked you, I think, and I've asked other Brits who are on the show, like, I can understand in America how there's this sense of like, okay, Black people came here via slavery. There's this sense of kind of guilt and restitution. And I can wrap my head around it with the Brits and Indians, maybe, right? But it's like, what do you owe to like people from Afghanistan or Somalia or Syria? It's like, what are you talking about? And there's never an answer. It's just like, we got to do it because we're the good guys or something like that. So, but
that is what it all boils down to. I just put a video up on my channel about this, actually. What it all boils down to is the story that we tell ourselves, right? And the story of the West since the beginning of the Enlightenment is that we are here to save humanity.
Right, that's right,
all of
yeah.
humanity. We are here to provide them with their universal human rights. And what that means is free mobile phones and as much taxpayer money as you can spend pissing away on whatever it is you want, right? This story is coming to an end, right? The lies that underpin the story is coming to an end. humans are not universal. They are particular. They are parochial. They are different. They are culturally very different to one another. And some cultures are simply not compatible with others. And it's not desirable to have certain people from certain cultures in your own culture roaming free. In fact, the very notion of freedom to a lot of these people is quite alien, right? You've got to remember, a lot of these people live in such thick social structures that they wouldn't have what we in the English-speaking world call freedom. They view that as kind of like a license for debauchery and sin, and they find that to be morally abhorrent, actually, that we allow things to happen that are terrible. And so when we bring them into our culture and say, right, okay, yeah, you can just hang up at the local school if you want, they think we're inviting them to rape children. That's what they think. And in their culture, because that's what they do in their own culture. This is, again, the Afghans are a really great example of this with Bakabazi, where if they can get access to a preteen boy, they'll him and turn him into a little dancing boy. And it's just like, okay, this is fucking gross.
Wait, for people who think Carl's making it up, it was a New York Times expose. When we were look it up, he's not making it up. He's not exaggerating. There's a lot of hand wringing in the U.S. military because they found that our allies in Afghanistan were doing this to young boys, and basically the military were told, look the other way because these are our people.
Yeah. These are our allies, and so the fables of the Enlightenment, which is we can have a universal brotherhood of man. They're all just like us, really, under the surface. Everyone's basically looking for liberal democracy, and they'll greet us as liberators. All of these fables have come smack into contact with reality, and they've completely crumbled. Everyone knows this isn't true. It's just visible now. It's plain as the nose on your face. And so the question is, what now? Because that was the grand story that we told ourselves. I mean, like, think about Africa as a great example. How many trillions of dollars have been spent in Africa? And yet Mr. Beast is there yesterday doing, oh, I'm setting up a well, guys. It's like, a fucking well? Like, if like, we've given them trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, how do they still need a well? You know, how are they not first world countries? And it's like, because they just don't think like us. I saw a video going around of this African guy talking to other Africans, explaining why their countries are not as good as Western countries. And he was like, look, in our language, we don't have a word for maintenance. And he was like, look, do you understand what that means? And the other African guy's like, well, why does that matter? It's like, it's because if you don't have this concept, you don't perform the duties associated with it. So, you know, like you've seen Empire of Dust, right?
No.
The Chinese guy, it's a Chinese businessman or like contractor or manager is in, I can't remember, it was Congo or wherever, and he's desperately trying to build a road or something like that, or a factory or something like that, and he just can't get the Africans to cooperate with him, and he's just, it's where the "I'm so tired" meme comes from.
Okay,
the Chinese guy just sighing because he's just trying to get the Africans to turn up to work on time, just to do the fucking job so he can pay them to get the job done, and there's this one bit in here where he's like, look, the Europeans left you all of this amazing stuff. They left you railroads. They left you working roads. They left you machinery. Why is it all like this? And the African guy he's talking to is just staring into the middle distance. He just doesn't have an answer. And it's because their cultures are just not geared around maintaining these sorts of things. And so it's like, okay, well, look, I'm not judging. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's good or bad. But it's clear that there's no amount of money that we can pour into Africa to make it like Sweden, right? It's just the people there don't behave in the way that you need to behave to have, like, you know, a Switzerland or something, right? And so, okay, we don't have to, like, this is the lie of the Enlightenment. We can just, if with enough money, we can just make them first world liberals. It's like, no, you just can't, right? So this story has come to an end.
I don't think it's the story of the Enlightenment. I think it's a more recent story, which was known as the white man's burden. And a very smart man named Carl Benjamin was in a debate once, and he turned to his shitlib opponent and says, "You're just a white supremacist who feels guilty about it." And I think that is the underpinning here, much more in many ways than the Enlightenment. It's this idea that as Brits, especially Brits, we have a duty to bring our enlightened values to the rest of the world. And if we have to be Sisyphus rolling that rock up a hill till the end of time, well, it's still the right thing to do.
I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do.
That's what they're saying. I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, but it is the values that underpin the Enlightenment, that there is a universalness to humanity,
That's right.
and we have a duty to raise them out of their normal, like, catatonic state, the pre-enlightened state. And there are just people who just don't want that. They're just opposed to it, morally, intellectually, and culturally opposed to this. But this story of the Enlightenment, this story of the West, the whole world will become like us one day. That's the story that is coming to its end, right? That's coming to its natural conclusion, where it's like, no, they won't, and they don't want to be, and they don't think like us, and we don't understand them. That's the thing. We don't understand them. They don't understand us either. And so the question for the West is now, what is actually the new story that we're going to follow? Right. The old story is wrong. Right. The old story is predicated on a bunch of really wrong assumptions that we've tried, we've smacked into reality. The whole thing's fallen apart. So now what do we do? And I don't have an answer for this. I don't think anyone has an answer for this. But this is the question that we're going to be grappling with for at least the remainder of our generation. What is the purpose? Because every civilization kind of has a purpose, right? In like pre-modern times, you would have upholding the dignity of a god. You know, like for the Assyrians, for example, it was maintaining the dignity of the god of Ashur, to make sure that Ashur was worshipped across the land, across the world, and that the king of Ashur was the king of the 4 quarters of the world, to make sure that no one challenged his dominion. That's okay. That's great. You know, that's their bag. That's not what we do. What we were supposed to do, what we thought of ourselves as doing, is essentially saving humanity with the rubric of human rights. Well, okay, that's not happening. So now what? What do we do next? What is our purpose here? And this is what keeps civilizations going. And if we can't find a purpose, the civilization kind of falls apart from within.
Yeah, I think in many ways we're akin to 1929, not in an economic sense, but in a philosophical sense, because for years you had the communists, literal communists, obviously seized power in 1917 in the Soviet Union, what became the Soviet Union. And in 1929, in the Great Depression, their prophecies, apparently, of capitalism imploding under the weight of its own contradictions, looked to be coming true. So it's like, all right, like what we have now, this liberal democracy isn't working. What is going to be the next thing? And there are different answers were, you know, New Deal style progressive. There was a book called 4 Patterns of Revolution. Liberalism is off the table. We've all you know, kind of seen that it doesn't work. It led to the Great Depression. That was the argument. So we're either going to have, you know, progressivism in the New Deal style in America, Bolshevism in the Soviet Union, or fascism / Nazism in, which is very, I don't like how they're conflated, whatever, Italy or in Germany. So those are kind of the choices that were on the table. And it's very possible, and I fear, and I'm sure you do as well, that, you know, once things fall apart, they don't always fall back together in a good way. They often fall back together in a much worse way.
No, I mean, I personally think that the future is going to be quite tribal.
Yeah, right.
I genuinely think the question of identity has been forced upon civilization by left-wingers. The left is, they spent the last 50 years taking advantage of the concept of identity, and they have done. And the thing is, if they'd done this and left our countries mostly homogenous, probably would be fine. Right, probably be just fine, and no one would really be that bothered, because if it was like, you know, oh, you've got 10% non-ethnic majority people in your country, yeah, let them have the little identity politics, right? It doesn't matter. It's only 10%. It's not that's not going to substantively change the country, but they couldn't do that. They were like, no, so that's why we need to bring in as many foreigners as we possibly can, because you're evil white people, or you're evil Jewish people, or you're either this, you're either that. And it's like, okay, great, because what you're doing now is you're forcing it on people who have nowhere else to go, right? Because I mean, like in England in particular, like, we're constantly bombarded with people who have countries of their own. Like Rishi Sunak became the prime minister, and India cheers, because if things go south, he at least has a country that is operating in the interest of the Indian people, right? A country where culturally and morally, the jurisdiction of the people as a collective holds. The Indians possess India. The Pakistanis possess Pakistan. I mean, this is the great question between Israel and Palestine at the moment. Who possesses Israel or Palestine? And this is what the left is round, you know, and I'm not trying to make a comment on it, but they're very firm. Oh, yeah, Palestine belongs to the Palestinians. We have to recognize Palestinian statehood. We don't hear, well, what is a Palestinian actually? You know, what is it? How do you know the Palestinian? Like, we're having that debate about Englishness and Englishmen in England at the moment, and it's like, right, but we're not having that about Palestine. So we accept that there are a Palestinian people as a collective, and as a collective, they have a jurisdiction over a certain territory. Right, okay, I agree with you. Now, who has jurisdiction over England? You tell me. And the answer, of course, is the English. And this is the question that I think is going to dominate politics.
The answer is the Palestinian people.
Well, yeah. That's Keir Starmer actually has decided that's the answer, and he's bringing them over here because they have to go somewhere, apparently. So, yeah, that question has been answered. But this is the issue that's going to be dominating politics for a long time in the future, I think.
Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where Carl took questions from subscribers. Carl, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Ranting and raving. I feel honestly cathartic.
You are welcome.
Just when you thought summer couldn't get any hotter, Pluto TV is turning up the heat with thousands of free movies. Presenting Summer of Cinema. Stream your favorite blockbuster films like Gladiator.
I will have my vengeance.
Good Burger.
This is what I call fast food.
Beverly Hills Cop. The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. And Julie and Julia.
Bon appetit.
All for free on your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.